The Carleton Center for Public History is a designated Carleton University research center which encourages, promotes, and facilitates the study of public history, cultural memory, and historical consciousness. The CCPH Alumni Interview Project invites current public history graduate students at Carleton to develop relationships with program alumni and showcases the talent, diversity, and achievements of Carleton's public history program. For more information, please visit ccph.carleton.ca.
Yeah, well, I guess a bit of biographical info might be good though.
Yeah,
if you want
who
to,
we are.
if you want to delve into that, Tascha Morrison.
Who I am?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I was just introduce you. This is Tom Bigelow. I don't really know much about him.
I could do that, yeah, if you want me to. Born and
Sharply
raised
dressed. And
talking about you or me? Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Dapper.
Yes. Okay. So I'm Tascha Morrison. I guess. Well, I graduated from the public history program in 2010, and my research focused on memory and commemoration, with specific emphasis on the First World War. I focused on Remembrance Day, how it's celebrated in Canada, and my background before that was also history. I started off in the education program out west in Alberta, and did a couple of years in the program and decided I was not cut out to be a teacher, but liked the idea of focusing on aspects that are involved in teaching, like that idea of talking to people and then teaching youth, and so hence the public history eventually becoming a focus for a master's. But right now I work at a research firm in the Glebe called Content Works Incorporated. The principal there is Julie Harris. It's just a small office, but we do some really interesting work. I was originally brought in to work on a project on the Alaska Highway. We're working on getting the Alaska Highway nominated as a National Historic Site.
Wow.
Currently, it's commemorated as an event. It's construction in 42, but we want to get it commemorated as a place.
Right.
So it's a pretty challenging endeavor, as there's no precedent for something of this size and complexity. It goes across international and provincial borders.
Yeah.
So that's been ongoing now for 2 years, and it's going wonderfully. It's really interesting work. While I've been at Content Works, I've also started working on another project for the Kikitani Truth Commission and the Kikitani Inuit Association on Inuit communities in Kikitalik. My particular contribution is writing community histories, and they're based off of interviews that were conducted over the course of 2 years, and just the interviews, this is going to be a tangent, the interviews were done, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, there was a lot of press on the RCMP shooting of Eskimo dogs in the north, and so this commission is kind of stemmed from that, and then what the part that I'm working on now is just kind of developed again from the information that was collected and the desire to get that information out to the communities, hence community histories and just various thematic papers, etc., like on housing and education in the north. That's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome.
Is it my turn now?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I sort of got a couple of questions in there.
Packed them in. Well, my name is Tom Bigelow. I also graduated the same year as Tascha in 2010 in the public history program. I had done my undergrad at Carleton as well in history, and had the great fortune of working with some profs involved in the public history program, namely Jim Opp. I never thought about doing an MA, and then had a fourth-year seminar with Jim called Imagining the West, and it kind of hit my stride. I was in journalism. I switched out of journalism. I went into history because I liked the courses. Never really thought about doing anything with it. I thought about teaching. I guess we all do, to some extent. But I already knew that wasn't going to work for me. So I really enjoyed the seminar with Jim, and he proposed that I think about applying to public history. So I did, and I remember he actually was the guy. He called me on the phone one day and said, "Just calling to let you know you got in." So it's pretty cool. I mean, again, I had no idea what I was getting myself in for, but I thought, why not? And really enjoyed the experience. Met Tascha. and as part of that program, the internship, I interned with the House of Commons in curatorial services, which is where I am now, working there on contract. It's been a long contract, but contract nonetheless. I had a series of jobs after graduating. I've kind of bounced around a bit, various museums and heritage groups in Toronto, briefly, and back in Ottawa. So I've kind of run the gamut. I've done some research work. I've done some visitor experience work, as I'll call it.
Have.
Yeah. So certainly there's been many different opportunities, but now working at the House of Commons as an assistant, I get to do some research, a lot of administrative support as well. But I'm part of a small group. I'm responsible for all the art and artifacts that belong to the House of Commons inside the building. So painting, sculpture, furniture as well. And we get the interesting, odd project that comes up from time to time too. We had to do an exhibit a little while back, for example, about a railway spike that was gifted to the Prime Minister. Won't go into detail about all that because it was a bit dicey, but but it's been an interesting experience, and again, an experience, a job that I've gotten almost directly as a result of the program and the networking that I got from the programming. So very grateful for that, and so we'll see. Also, as a result, Tascha and I are currently working on a walking tour for the NCPH conference coming up next week. We're doing a walking tour of downtown Ottawa, the labor, I don't even know what to call it anymore. The Labor History
Museum has got a labor history tour.
Yeah. And this is all kind of snowballing from a project we did as students in the program. We developed a tour pamphlet and actually gave the tour originally in 2009. So this is 4 years removed, and we're still involved in this project, volunteering our services this time. And so we're still working together with another former graduate, Liam.
Who also worked on the project.
Yeah. So, 4 years removed, we're still involved in public history and public history-related projects and stuff like that. So, it's been interesting so far. Yeah.
So you said that Jim got you into looking into the master's program. What did you end up doing your research on?
I also looked at memory and commemoration. My focus was, from the outset, was on Quebec City's 400th anniversary in 2008. And I actually went there in the summer of 2008, even though I wasn't in the program yet, to do my research. I basically just went and attended shows, and I drank a lot of beer. And I don't know if I was funded. I'm not sure if I got paid to do that or not. But anyway, don't edit that out. But no, I focused on the commemorations tied to the 400th anniversary. And I specifically looked at one show. It was called The Image Mill. It was a projection light show on the old grain silos in the old port of Quebec City. And what I ended up writing about really was, how the public engaged with this show and how they, through the use of social media and Flickr in particular, engaged in a discussion. At least I argue they did, using their own images of the show of images. It was all very convoluted. But anyway, it ultimately just trying to trace, okay, so these commemorations take place, what do they ultimately mean, and what do people actually take from them? And does it resonate? Does it mean anything to these people? And what are they saying about it? What traces linger after the fact? And do these discussions that come up in the shows, do they actually mean anything, go anywhere, or do they persist? So that's ultimately what my paper, it was not supposed to be that at all when I started, but that's what it ended up being.
Yes.
And it went through many different mutations and transformations through the process, but that ultimately is what I focused on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think that was kind of universal in our year. I'm going to write on this. 6 months later, I think I'm going to change that subject. I'm going to write on this now.
Yeah. But I think that speaks to the
Experience.
almost the experience of practicality of the program. I mean, being in the workplace is the same thing. I mean, a project from beginning to end goes through a lot of transformations, and you have to weigh it's time management, it's just addressing, okay, this is where the interest is, this is where it isn't, what's feasible, and
Well, a lot of the time you have a lot of grand ideas, and until you actually have to put them into practice, which you do in a lot of the courses that you take in your first year, you don't realize the issues that can arise and how to, you just learn how to adjust. and refocus, I think, is the best way.
Yeah, no,
To-
you definitely learn to be flexible.
Yes.
And I think that's one positive we definitely learned from the program is thinking on our feet and
And they were
Kinda rolling
so
with the punches.
supportive of the constant refocusing. I remember, like Tom was saying, that Jim Mott was one of the ones that was responsible for really getting him into the program. I think, I guess the two principals you said, Jim Mott and David Dean, together are jointly responsible for me being interested in and actually ultimately getting into the program. And I remember meeting the first time I met David Dean at a coffee house, and it was funny because he described himself as the guy who was wearing the red scarf, and he just sat down and I would say for about 30 minutes straight just tried to sell me on public history, how wonderful it was, and it worked.
That sounds like Dave. Yeah.
And then I ended up meeting with Jim Opp, and he helped me write my application, and so they were very helpful.
I think David Dean. This is becoming the David Dean and Jim Opp
I know.
appreciation.
I
show,
could throw in some remarks for Dominique Marshall.
I could throw in some remarks about John Marshall.
She's responsible for me being able to
start
pay
name
for
dropping.
my education. So.
But no, I was gonna say about David Dean. I think he kind of took on the role of the
This is
departmental.
secretly why they're doing this, by the way.
Yeah, it's all about them. Really, the David and Jim show. A tribute. No, I think he became the psychiatrist slash,
Oh, yes.
confidant slash,
Motivational speaker
for the
entire
entire
department.
Yeah,
There was
entire
many
program.
a day where I'm pretty sure he had a lineup outside his door of people who were just holding on for that 2 minutes until they could walk into the office and shut the door and be like, ah!
Yeah.
So he's definitely a treasure in the
But I think
department.
there's something to be said. If we are going to talk at all about the marketability of the program, the appeal of the program, I think certainly the support
The staff.
of the faculty was paramount, and something. Yeah, no, and even after graduating, the likes of Paul Litt, Jim Opp, trying to keep in touch and keep you apprised of any openings that come up, and trying to keep in touch, and they still have their CCPH events, Public History Partnership Program, whatever the heck it is, the acronym, I don't know. But no, so that certainly is a big selling point to me, is also just the continuing presence and support even after
Yes.
the fact. And yeah, very cool, very much appreciated. So yeah,
They're
good memories.
invested in your future.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, I mean, I think in this particular field, contacts and that kind of support, I mean, word of mouth comes into play more than you could dream. I've learned since graduating, and just the ability to always fall back, on my supervisors, David Dean, Tim Cook, and be like, okay, this is what's going on, and having the support from them has been incredibly valuable. Like, I mean, some of the work that I've gotten has been, if not a direct result, like associated with my continued relationship with these people. So
And to keep the Love Fest going,
yes,
I would also say that the network you build with your own classmates, and
Yes.
colleagues,
Yes.
in that regard is, on a professional level. I mean, in terms of passing along information and stuff like that, that's one thing. But also just having that support network there, and it's one thing about public history at Carleton and being in Ottawa. Most of the jobs are here, so a large contingent of the alumni stay
End up
put,
here.
and even when you're doing your internship. I remember having lunch with a few people downtown. We were doing internships and just talking about it. This is what was good about my job. This is what's not so good. Sharing those experiences, commiserating about
yes.
the not so good stuff. Same while you're writing as well. I mean, it's good to have that. But even now, I mean, I still see. Obviously, we're working on that Workers' Heritage Project together. But I was playing soccer for years with a number of the graduates of the program, and just keeping that network alive, and
I think the
it's
fact
very
that
helpful.
the program is kept small
Yeah.
actually aids that. I mean, you're not walking into very large classrooms where there's
No.
just a disconnect between people. Like, when you're discussing on a daily basis with the same people, different topics and different subjects, you kind of form relationships.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that might seem very kind of secondary. Oh, okay, great, you made some great friendships,
Oh.
but it is very,
When
very
your
meaningful, very
life is
significant.
reading and researching
Yeah.
and writing, I think those are the things that kind of bring you
Oh,
up
yeah.
for air.
Yeah.
And again, even now, I mean, knowing people that have gone through some dry spells, some droughts in terms of
Yes.
work, having that kind of network of people to fall back on who've gone through the same thing.
Seeing the
We're
different
doing the same
directions that
thing.
people have
Yeah.
gone into, so
Yeah.
that you causes you to kind of reevaluate your options as well. So
Yeah, no, it's.
I mean, it opens your eyes to different opportunities. You don't see it as I need to get a job at the archives per se or this museum. And that's
Yeah, no, you really do see it. Everyone's kind of taken very divergent paths. You know, some have gone for more school, which I
Yes.
was contemplating. I remember when I proposed that, Tasha was like, "Are you serious? Are you?" Anyway, I can't remember exactly how you put it, but yeah.
I was a little like
taken aback.
taken aback.
That's
Yes.
it. That's the best way to put it. But no, just seeing the different paths people take, and it's comforting. It's it's encouraging as well. I mean, you see that you're not confined to I studied
A specific
this.
direction.
I need to work in a
Yeah.
museum. You see people working for research companies, archives.
Marketing companies.
You know, who knows what.
I guess Amanda isn't really a public history grad, but
No,
she's
but
an
she was an
honorary
honorary one. Yeah.
history grad.
But Sebastian is teaching, but he's
Yes.
teaching in a very
all over the
Sebastian
world.
Major. Yeah, he's another former student in our year is teaching. I guess at a private school, taking tours with students to South America.
Yes.
I don't even know. So it's you look around and you see that wow, a degree in public history, it does open doors, and it's not just an archive or museum. It could be anything that you can try and put your mind to it. Anyway, so it's encouraging. It's refreshing. It's a lot of a lot of love for the program in that regard.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's still the same.
Yeah.
Like for us, we've got a number from the second year who intermix quite a bit.
Yeah, and the one thing I would suggest, I mean, if I was going to suggest anything to current students and future students, would be to network.
Yes.
Networking is huge.
Cannot emphasize that enough.
I mean, obviously, build your CV and diversify, and I would say try and get some hands-on experience as much as possible. But having that network and having that those communications with colleagues, with faculty, with previous employers, is just so important. Because it's still very much a game of who do you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
in terms of
Because it
finding
is a
work.
contract-based field. I
That's
mean,
it.
when
These
a
things can come
proposal
up,
gets
yeah.
submitted, it's this person. Well, I know this person that's really good at this. Let's bring
Yeah.
them into our team.
We have our fun question, but
Yeah.
I don't want to dive right into the fun question without,
His answer's way better than
No, no, no.
That's why I'm avoiding that one.
No, it's really sad to say. I had to admit to Tasha that when we were in the program, I kind of took for granted how often we were in various museums, and I've worked in various museums, but of late now it's just so focused on work and life outside of work. I haven't been to a museum lately, but I like to think my job. We're not quite a museum, but we're still kind of a museum. So there's still some interesting stuff going on.
People
So
come
Yeah.
to experience it's public history. It's
It's-
where decisions of
it's all
government
around
is.
us, man.
Our tour goes to Parliament Hill.
There you go. Can't get away from Parliament Hill.
No,
yeah.
you cannot. I was sending you pictures all day today. Of
I was
West Block.
ignoring them. Yeah. No. So it should be. So we have this tour coming up, and we take it from the Delta Hotel down Spark Street to Parliament Hill, and we'll end there.
Overlook
But
down to the Breton Flats and
yeah,
Chaudière
no.
and Hull, so.
When is it during the? Do you
It's
remember?
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday
It's
morning.
the first thing in the morning. I think it's like 9:30. So.
Yeah.
Good to know. I will.
Oh, good God.
I'm a morning person. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's me, Tom, and Liam.
Oh, that could be fun.
Highly exciting, articulate tour. Oh, it's gonna be
Big
gold.
massive coffees.
Yes.
Yes, probably. Well, as long as I can still
Hoping
hold my
for good
notes.
weather,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm
We'll see
working
what
on
we
being
can do.
note free, but
Note
with
free.
notes in the back pocket. Not
I
far
got some
away
work to
notes.
do then. I'm all
this
notes.
is my goal. I'm not saying this is where I'll be Wednesday morning.
Yeah.
It might be
I will say
Yeah.
this though. I mean, the numerous projects we've had, certainly does give you an appreciation of Ottawa, and makes you realize
The
that
value
there's
of
a lot of public history out there.
being in this city
Oh yeah.
in pursuing public history. So
Yeah, it's funny. There's times when you feel like it's hard in the city, and the jobs don't seem to be.
and
creeping
sometimes
up,
the
but
jobs are in the smaller communities, and you have to
You're
decide whether or not you
tempted.
want to move.
Yeah.
There's been a couple times that I've tried to convince my partner to move to Dawson Creek, BC. He's not going for it.
It's not that Dawson Creek, is it?
No, it's not that Dawson
wanna
Creek.
leave? No.
It's the Alaska Highway Dawson Creek. But he
Have me
doesn't want
sold.
to. Hey,
Oh, I get that job.
yeah, there you go. I should send you out there, and then I maybe have a real supporter for my
There
project.
you go.
I'd make you support it.
Oh. But,
Yeah, well, one of the things that being a public history grad, working in a research company, especially with all the theory that you have in your head and the ideas of the way things could be, a lot of the time clients have a very specific focus, a specific idea of what they expect the research to show, and you do have to push sometimes to get them to think outside of that box, and to accept some of the nuances of history now that you're so aware of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, like traveling the Alaska Highway in promoting the nomination project and trying to get people to share where their heritage resources of specific importance to the highway cultural landscape are. Their immediate response, well, it's the museum. It's the museum, it's the archives. And it's like, okay, I need you to think past that. There's resources that are like on the highway, these old lodges, the people that are involved, the actual aspect of driving the highway. How does this translate to you? And just, it's an interesting dynamic, because they look at you and they're like, but that's not history. History is a museum. And you're like, you have to explain to them that, no, you actually, it's more than that. And that's what we're trying to promote with this nomination, and get them to consider their local heritage, how it's attached to this site, how it feeds into the national history, and hopefully encourage then the communities to go out on their own now and create interpretation plans, heritage interpretation plans, and develop heritage tourism in the region. So,
Or
but
get someone to do that for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hi.
I think I know somebody.
Here's my card.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like one of the museums. This is actually going to be my fun thing. So.
Awesome. Look at that segue. Look at that.
The museum in Fort Nelson, if you're ever in the area,
Always.
is, I think that, I swear to God, if the museum course in the public history program could do a day trip to that museum, it would just, I think minds
very
would
long day
explode.
Yeah.
It is a hilarious collection of every possible concept for a museum that you could possibly think of, in that part of it's outdoors and a living history, in the sense that the curator, Marl Brown, I swear he's got to be like 90. And he's just lived the highway, so he knows it. But there's warehouses full of cars. There's old cars spread out all over the property. There's equipment all over the property. From wood stoves to gas-run wood chopping machines. They have an actual museum building that is full, again, of exhibits. And I use that word loosely, in that it's just anything and everything that he's managed to collect over the last 70 years is now in this building.
He's basically a hoarder.
Yes.
And, okay.
It's
Slash
remarkable. But at the same time, when you go there, there's aspects of it, like they've moved, like they have the old Hudson Bay Company posts, and so there's a lot of different layers. It's a really interesting site, but at the same time, as a student of public history and somebody who's taken, the museum studies course, it just makes me want to be like, oh my God, you can't do this, Like he goes out on the highway and he takes down signs when they're falling down.
Yeah.
But he takes them and he puts them in the museum. And I remember we were doing a survey of sites along the highway, me and my coworker Alice, and we had a list of things that we knew were supposed to be out there. and we would go trekking through the bush for hours looking for these things, only to finally arrive in Fort Nelson and be like, wait a second, that's that, sign or that memorial that we were looking for that has now been moved because at some point a grader or something hit it, knocked it off, he went and picked it up to save it, but at the same time has moved it to the museum. So
the heritage side of you.
yeah, it's like it's an interesting dynamic that their museum has. So that was my unique. But I think there would be some major discussions stemming from that. It's a hilarious place.
A lot of those small museums, like
small communities,
small community museums out in Alberta, you get similar things where it's like, oh, this is this from over there, and this is that, and here's the little museum building, and this set's on wedding dresses with scary mannequins.
Yes,
and
I believe he's got
elsewhere.
a mannequin who's wearing a fur bikini, and it's I'm not sure what
I'm not going to touch that.
it's supposed to represent, and so. But it's part of the museum, and it's something that speaks to the community of Fort Nelson, and I can see that because they have, they're rugged. They live in the north, they're in the middle of nowhere,
But
they have a sense of humor. I don't know, but yeah, it's interesting working with the small communities and their perception of what history is and how you present it, and what we're trying to introduce to them as a concept. So.
No, I really for bikinis. I
Beat
can't.
that with your unique
I'm
site.
done. I'm done. I can't. I'm going to Fort Nelson.
Really glad I thought of
For bikinis, yeah.
bikinis.
That's
There's
an MA
moose
right
heads
there.
on the wall.
This is a potential public history gold mine.
Oh my gosh! Like I swear to God,
They have a gold mine now.
it's a crazy site. It's a couple of acres in size. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I've been to a couple.
No, I think likewise what I find most encouraging and fun and what I've noticed as well of late or look for is, again, these changing perceptions of history and kind of trying to get communities to kind of open their eyes and look at what's around them. Again, that living history. Again, which I find so enjoyable about this walking tour is we get to walk the streets of Ottawa, which unfortunately I think too often is overlooked or neglected.
Oh,
Spark Street.
From that photograph. I mean,
Yeah.
that concept, that context. I found a photograph from LeBreton Flats, 1869, looking up towards Parliament Hill. But in the background, there's a tower, and we weren't sure what it belonged to. And the general consensus that it could be West Block.
Mackenzie Tower.
And it was. People were like, no, it's not that tall. And it just then trying to follow up and prove that it was West Block, and it is, that tall. It was the perception, the way the photo was taken. And again, like when you walk around downtown Ottawa, like where Wellington is, where the Supreme Court is, we were looking at all these photos, and I was like, well, that can't be where that's supposed to be. That, I remember we were looking at one photo where Supreme Court's not there. The area is actually still just small houses and residential area. And it was completely throwing us off because I was like, well, there's the riverbank and the drop there. And it's like, well, how can they have that? Where's Wellington? Because they've literally moved it.
To see that evolution, I mean, Ottawa, I
You
think,
take for granted that
is a
this
striking
is what it's
example.
like.
Yeah.
And the photo she's talking about with the tower in it, I mean, it is a beautiful photo. I've seen similar ones, but this one is quite powerful. In that, in the foreground, I mean, the background, you have Parliament Hill, which is very
Looks
intriguing.
Almost ghostish.
It does,
background.
but it's the juxtaposition because you have Parliament Hill in the background, but in the foreground you have these stacks of lumber, and you have two gentlemen riding down a timber slide, and you come to realize, it was 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago, but whatever, my math skills. I'm a historian. Don't ask me the math. In 1869, there was Parliament Hill, and this was the beginning of Ottawa becoming a national capital. You have this beautiful building, but at the same time, it was a lumber town. It was a rough and ready town, if you will. But no, just to see that this history, it is all around us, and it still lingers. But often, often people just, they walk over it, past it. So what I my fun or interesting kind of thing that I've noticed lately is, again, harkening back to my interest in digital, is I'm really excited in the ways that people use things like mobile devices. The Museum of London has a beautiful
You pointed out
program.
yeah.
Yeah, and even Carleton had used iPhones and such
Yeah.
for the Read of Timescapes project last year. I think it was last year.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm old. It's so long ago now. But to see again using the digital. I said that really weird. The digital. Using these technologies. Not just because they're there, but to talk about the past and to bring the past back to life, back into the present.
We're actively encouraging the communities that we visited. Our workshops that we just held were attended by an average age of 50, 60, and the major complaint was that youth just don't care. You can't get them away from their iPhones. They don't care about history or heritage, and we're trying to tell them that this digital technology is a great way to encourage younger generations to participate, but at the same time get the message out there to a much wider audience. So
yeah, and I just love the fact that you give the community, the individual, the powers in their hand to take in history. So I'm encouraged to see where it goes. I think there's shortfalls to digital history, digital technology, but I think there's a lot of potential there too. So. For example, I was telling Tash the other day, we had Google inside the Parliament buildings. They're doing Google streetscape indoors of the Parliament buildings because eventually they're going to be closing down the center block.
Really?
And for quite a few years, you won't be able to tour the center block. You won't be able to walk inside the building. So this will be an alternative, not an ideal alternative. And of course, Google, there's no analysis, there's no context. It's just visual. But at the same time, I think there's a potential there to incorporate this technology to develop some kind of an app or whatever it is, and that's a way to keep.
Proposal to do that, Tom.
There you go. That's
Make work.
Somebody give me money. But no, that's an opportunity there to again keep the history of the story alive, to continue to tell the stories, even though people can't get in the buildings. To keep that.
Especially in our country. Our country's so spread out. I mean, I have family members that have never been to Ottawa. Yeah. I'll preface that with we're not from Ottawa.
From Yukon.
I'm from the Yukon.
Oh.
Yeah.
But yeah, I take it for granted that I ride my bike past Parliament and it's just like, well, it's just there now. But every time my mom comes to visit, it's like, no, let's go walk around Parliament. I want to see that. I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
That landscape. And so just getting it out there to people who don't have the opportunity to come.
Or even just the ability to tour the building for the hallways that you're not allowed to walk down on the tours.
Yeah.
And I know I've had that where it's like, oh look, there's some sort of painting down there. I want to see it, but I'm not allowed.
Get in touch.
Yes.
I'll take you down there.
Ooh.
No. But we'll go. But no.
I may have a few other public
It's not that exciting, but okay, we'll go. It's a powerful icon. There's a lot of them, but again, just to say, it's funny when you think about that building, those hallways, those paintings weren't there 100 years ago, and yet somehow they really do have a powerful meaning. And again, being able to share that
digitization, just online exhibits, etc., being able to portray that contrast. I mean, you can look at the photos next to each other. This is what it looked like. This is what it looks like now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of opportunity, I think, for public history with digital technology. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's new, it's different, but really it's just another tool for us to tell stories, and that's what we are, we're storytellers. And it's just encouraging to see that there maybe is another way to engage those youngins.
So it's good that you're all signed up for digital history.
Yeah, I think
It's going to be,
I think all of us are.
there's some language in there that you're just going to read and be like, I have no idea what they just said, but a lot of it was very interesting.
Yeah, no, it was very rewarding, and I'm sure there'll be some mission projects involved as
Yes. Well, I know you had one last year where it was doing digital interfacing with iPhones and iPads and all that to some sort of. I saw it.
So not a techie.
Well, it was something like they had a flat image on a paper, and then using the phone, you got to see it 3D from all sides because it was photographed from the museum.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I got to see one of these, and it's just mind blowing.
Yeah.
See, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's really, and I think this is where public historians can come into play. It's, technology's there, and certainly I think there's
I think
a
the
desire.
ability and the knowledge to translate
Yeah, exactly.
history into that
Effectively,
interface.
in a meaningful way.
Yes.
Because certainly I think institutions
No,
want to dive into this, to jump on the
there's a
bandwagon,
lot of that.
but they need someone there to bridge that gap. We have the digital technology. We need to be able to create something that actually will be used and used in a meaningful way. So
Yeah.
I think there's certainly a place there for public historians to kind of bridge that gap as well.
Definitely.
That's a beautiful note to end on.
Is it?
Yeah.
That was
I
so
don't
good.
know.
Good job.
As the sand through the hourglass.
These are the days of our lives.
Yes. I thought I quoted Dawson's Creek in. That's my
Public historians watch a lot of TV.
yeah. Daytime television. Yeah.
I can honestly say that while I was writing my paper, I watched all 9 seasons of Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
It's kind of
that's what I
creepy.
did.
It's creepy and kind of weird, but I watched a lot of Band of Brothers,
Oh,
and I
see,
just
I
felt
should
like,
have been watching
I
things
felt,
like that.
and I felt like, man, if they could do that, if they could subject themselves to that, I could probably write, 40
No,
pages.
it's Seinfeld. Seinfeld got me through.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we need a wrap up message of hope and inspiration, Dash?
Oh,
I'm sure there's one or two in there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Stay
Stay
safe.
positive.
Yeah.
Stay safe.
Be safe out there, public historians. It's a tough world. No,
It's a tough world.
no, it definitely was worth the while. An experience I would do all over again. I would definitely do it again. And yeah, no, I don't think it's stopped or ever will stop paying benefits and dividends.
Oh,
All right. Well, I think that covers it.
Yeah.
yeah,
This
that
was
was long.
wonderful.
Sorry.